this means so much to me, and it's something that I don't know how long it's taken away from me. And I remember thinking at the time, like, if this means this much to you, you need to do something about this.
How many people go through life doing work they really don't like, but every day dreaming of, say, working in the aviation industry? They say it's too late. They think it would be too hard. They think it would go against conventional norms. If you never go after what you want, you'll never have it. This is Fly the Transition. Join us as we soar through the captivating stories of individuals embracing a thrilling journey into the aviation industry. From pilots spreading their wings to mechanics fine-tuning the engines and a myriad of industry professionals, each with a unique tale to tell. Get ready to dive into the diverse backgrounds, the pivotal moments that propelled their leap, and the sheer determination that transformed their aspirations into reality. We're not just about dreams. We're about making them take flight. Welcome to Fly the Transition. And now your host, Jim Schilling.
Hello once again, all my aviation friends. Welcome to yet another episode of Fly the Transition. So this time around, we're going to welcome yet another guest who is right in the middle of navigating their own path to career change. Now, I think I mentioned before that I think it's important to talk to people who are still smack dab in the middle of the process. If I had episode after episode about so-and-so is in job A and they transition to being an airline pilot at the end, while those stories can still be inspiring, I think that there's still a lot to be learned from those who are still working their way through that process. We can hear somewhat in real time about the challenges that they're facing. And as the industry changes and as the hiring situations change, I think that's going to be important to stay on top of as people are working through things. So if you're a listener who's trying to be inspired, you're working through the process right now, hopefully an episode like this will be beneficial for you to hear what others are going through as well, something you can maybe relate to. So in this episode, I had the privilege of talking with Leila. She has been working in the nutrition field, working with Head Start programs and underprivileged children to help them with all sorts of varieties of nutrition issues. So though she's working on becoming a professional pilot, she's still actively working in her career field. And that certainly won't come without challenges, sacrifices, and a lot of hard work, but Leila has her eyes set on the world of aviation. So whether you're a seasoned aviator or someone considering a career change yourself, this episode promises to have some captivating exploration of Leila's passion and the thrills that she has on the horizon. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest Leila to the Fly the Transition podcast, and let's delve into her career journey. All right, I'm really happy to welcome Leila to the Fly the Transition podcast. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So you're one of the guests that I've kind of handpicked, so to speak, to talk about not just your prior career and transition into something aviation related, but you're actually going through the process right now, right?
Yeah, I'm currently in the process of obtaining my commercial certificate.
Okay.
I'm looking about a month out from that check ride. So still pretty much right in the middle of the process, but
Sure.
We're getting there.
And I think it's really cool to not just talk to people who are like through the transition and into where they want to be, but also those who are like in the middle of it and experiencing it. So I really appreciate your perspective. And hopefully as you progress through things, we can talk more as you get to where you want to go.
Right. Yeah, that'd be very exciting.
So to start things out, I'll ask you, we talked a bit before we started recording about, you didn't like grow up going, I'm going to be a pilot. I have to be around aviation, right?
Not at all. It's actually quite the opposite. I was like that, I think I was in middle school when 9/11 happened. And I just remember seeing the Twin Towers and it was just very traumatizing. And I think a lot of people my age had the same experience and the same trauma from that. So it was always something that kind of stuck with me. And another thing is that half of my family is from Iran. So we'd go and we'd pick them up from the airport. And you'd hear, right after 9/11, you'd hear the security alerts, ringing through the airport. And it was I just remember it being very scary. I had a lot of anxiety going to the airport.
Sure.
So kind of fast forward until I was about, I want to say 18, my best friend wanted to go see her father in DC. And force me on a plane. She was just like, I bought you a ticket, we're going.
Yeah.
So I remember getting on that plane and I was very anxious. And we get up in the air and, we're about cruising and I'm just sweating, head to toe sweating. And I look outside and I'm like, it's beautiful. It's something I'd never seen in my, that kind of perspective I'd never seen. So it was definitely something I never looked into as an opportunity that I would want to pursue myself.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I looked at it, the perspective I looked at it at the time.
So since aviation wasn't your plan as you are coming into adulthood, what direction did you decide to go?
So I've always been like a huge science nerd. So for me, like the human body, the processes of metabolism has always been very interesting. It was easy for me to choose a direction when I went to college. It was either like go pre-med, go into nursing, go into nutrition. I remember taking the one of the elective prerequisite course to nursing, and it was nutrition. And I just became so interested in how nutrients are digested, what our body does to them, how we process, how we use them, how it really, makes our composition. And that was my route. I knew from then on, this is what I wanted to go into nutrition, and I wanted to focus on children. So I graduated with my degree in nutrition, got a couple of certifications along the way, and went into a private practice where I worked with children with pediatric gastroenterology disorders.
Okay.
So a lot of kids with like malnutrition. They had like feeding tubes that I would help ensure that they're getting enough nutrients. We had kids with fatty liver disease. So that's kind of where I started. And then I wanted to kind of explore the community aspect of it. So I moved into Head Start, which is a government-funded program for low-income children. So that's where I've been the last 7 years. I've moved up in the ranks in the agency that I'm in now, and I actually manage about 1,000 kids, 3 nutritionists, and it's one of those things that's it's been very fulfilling. I work with children and families who are underprivileged. They haven't really. These kids are grown up, or I'm sorry, these kids are born into these families where, maybe they don't have the income. Maybe there's a split family. Maybe the parents incarcerated. Maybe they're foster children. So it's been very self-fulfilling to be part of this kind of program.
So a question I have for you, oddly enough, I was talking to someone at work about dietitians and nutrition in general, but the training for that isn't just like a walk in the park, is it? Is it pretty extensive?
Yeah. So I have a 4-year degree in nutrition, which interestingly enough is a kind of moderately like a pre-med route. Like you take a lot of the same chemistry classes, anatomy, physiology, all of that. I was just joking with a friend the other day that I used to be able to tell you every single intermediate for like how sugar is broken down, how, carbohydrates are used in our body. Not something you really use on a day-to-day basis when you're talking to families about proper nutrition. So yeah, it was definitely a pretty intense route. I'm happy I did that. I'm happy that was the career I chose, my first career. And it's definitely something that has made me feel very satisfied.
So you also explored, it sounds like, pre-med and nursing and stuff. So was there a driving force that moved you towards the dietitian and nutrition side?
Yeah. So again, I just took that basic human nutrition, like it was like HUN 1201, like the basic course. And I wanted more. And that was I went and talked to the the counselors within, I went to Florida State. So I went to the guidance counselors at Florida State and talked to them and said, hey, I'm really interested in this. They said, great, you've actually taken a lot of the same prerequisites. Let's go ahead and set you up for that pathway instead. So it was basically just me I just wanted to know more. And I love food. I'm a huge foodie. So it was kind of like I paired my love for science, the human body, and food, and I just put it all together and made a career out of it.
That's really cool. With the pediatric work that you did, there has to be a lot of challenges with that. And I can't imagine that's easy work dealing with kids that have, these disorders that kind of make them malnourished, so to speak, right?
Yeah. So I've seen children with digestion disorders, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, these kind of disorders that you don't normally think that children tend to get. You think it's more of like an older population will have, but these are disorders that make these children, malnourished. They come in, with failing to thrive. So that was kind of when I worked on the gastro side of it. I saw a lot of children like that, and we had to go through and, eliminate things from their diet, add things to their diet. So it was very case by case. And it was always very interesting seeing, my patient at 10 o'clock is going to be totally different than my patient at 1.
Yeah.
So that was a very, very interesting path for me. And it was very challenging. I will say going into Head Start, I found my niche really, I would say, when it comes to nutrition and community aspect. Again, like I grew up in an environment where, we weren't the most well off, but my parents made it possible where, my sister and I didn't really see the struggles they had. Well, these children actually see the struggles. They see that their families don't have enough food. They see that they're living in hotels. They see that they're couch surfing. They see these things, and they're born into it. And I feel like this is a program that has a lot of value, and the fact that we really put these kids in a stable environment they're surrounded by loving teachers. They have proper nutrition. We do health screenings. We actually work with their families directly to really make sure that they're reaching goals. It's a whole family program, not just the child. I really found myself happy, not that I wasn't before, but I found that was my path.
Sure.
Going into nutrition on the community aspect.
Almost like you're able to, have a certain amount of purpose or making that much more of an impact with people that are oftentimes underrepresented, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely underrepresented. I keep saying this, they're born into this. They choose to have this family. So I look back to, the struggles that we did have as children, that's nothing compared to what these children face at, they're not even 5 years old. So it's a very meaningful program, and it's very impactful.
I have to imagine that on top of just your overall knowledge of, diet and nutrition, that you also have to have a certain degree of compassion and almost like social work to do what you're doing.
That's a huge part of it. The social work aspect is huge. There's so many times that you want to empathize with families, but you're not in their shoes. So you have to really try to put yourself in their shoes and see what they're going through. We have families that they can't afford formula. So what can we do as a program to help them out? So it's really eye-opening to see, we know that there are families living in these conditions, but when you work directly with them, it really opens your eyes to, again, how blessed I was to be raised the way I was, and how blessed I was to have a family that was doing, better financially than, what a lot of these children experience at such a young age.
Is there a certain part of that job that you find to be more challenging than others?
So I would say the most challenging part is a lot of times working with other departments. So it's a very comprehensive program, which is fantastic. Like we have, again, a health, nutrition, inclusion, education, and all of us are so passionate about our own field that sometimes we tend to overlook the other areas.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of team building that we have to do, a lot of, working on communication that we have to do. And that's a rolling thing. We'll get really great at communicating with each other, and we're all here for the same purpose, and yay, this is what we're here for. And then we all look at ourselves like, I'm the most important department because kids need to eat. Well, okay, Leila, look at it like this. These kids also need to be healthy. These kids also need to have the nurturing love from their educators. It's not just you. So I think that gets me difficult sometimes, and it's something I always have to check myself. And I know other departments have to do the same. We're all passionate for these families. We want them to succeed, and we think our area is the most valuable. Well, no, we need to look back and say, no, all of us are. We have a valuable program because there's all of us. A lot of programs don't have that comprehensive outlook. So that's always a challenge, just kind of stepping back and really looking at we're all doing this together.
For sure.
I think nutrition is the most important thing in the world. Of course, I'm going to think that. The health specialist is going to think that a dental screening is the most important thing in the world. Of course. So we just really have to look at it from a perspective where we really collaborate. And I've learned a lot, stepping into a managerial position, how to collaborate with these other managers, where I'm, in these meetings supporting my team because I'm there for my girls that I manage. but I'm also there for the families. And I also need to understand that there are other areas that have needs too.
I'm really glad you transitioned to the management aspect of it. So my real job is I'm in law enforcement. For a long time, I worked as a major crimes detective working crimes against children. So we work so much with like underprivileged kids, and that too comes in and it turns into like a social work role, and we're working very closely with these other entities. So as I progress too, it's like you are able to still serve them through the people that you are advocating for and empowering and training and mentoring. So I guess the question I'm going to with that is, within your management role, you're not as much like hands-on with your clients, but do you feel in a way that you still have a positive impact based on the staff that work for you, things like that?
Yeah, of course. And I'm fortunate to work with, I manage a team of 3 nutritionists. And it's interesting because nutrition professionals we all kind of really feel, we're very passionate about nutrition. We all feel the same way. So I've trained them, for the Head Start standards and for agency standards, but we all have that core of, we're very passionate about food. We're very passionate about raising kids, to eat what they should eat, because that composes your body to, determine your health later on and all that. So it's definitely something that I, going into a managerial position, I do more policy writing. I sit on, management meetings where decisions are made.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of a little disconnected, I guess, from so much of the hands-on aspect. But when I took the position on, I wanted to keep a caseload myself.
Okay.
And that was because I didn't want to get so far disconnected to where I didn't know what my team did. I'm in it with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of that was my own choice. It was taking on a little bit of extra work, but I'm taking on this manager aspect, but I'm still a nutrition specialist for the program.
Sure.
This is still my role. And I wanted to make sure that I was still keeping that, like routinely going to visiting sites, talking to families, having my own special diets that I work with, and on top of being the one to write the policies, to update policies, to sit on these management teams where decisions are made. A lot of my job has been training too, which I love. I would say that's my favorite part of my job. Not only training my team, but training new staff. I get to go to parent meetings, which is always exciting. They always have something that they want to talk about. Like, I remember a couple of years ago, gluten-free was like a big thing that I wanted to know about. Like, why should we go gluten-free? What's the purpose of it? So it was very much of like a debunking kind of training. Like, okay, let me tell you why we have gluten-free diets. And if you choose to, this is what you need to do to make sure that you're still getting the proper nutrients and your child's still getting the proper nutrients and fiber and all that. So those meetings for me are very exciting, and I still get to go to those parent meetings and sit face to face with the families and just say, go for it. Ask me whatever you want regarding nutrition. What questions do you have? How can I help you? Whether it's you, your grandparents, the child themselves. So that's definitely something that I do continue.
That's really cool. And I could tell just from talking to you, like the passion that you have kind of comes through as you're describing it. So that's really cool too.
Yeah, like I said, I've always been, science, the human body, nutrition, food. I've always loved food. So it was just, for me, it was a no-brainer. It was kind of like something that, all right, this makes sense. This is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, that brings me to a bit of a kind of a pivoting point here. Obviously, you wouldn't be here if we didn't have some sort of pivot to aviation. So how did that start for you?
Okay, so the way it started, my father, who's also a private pilot, he had him and my mom actually purchased a Piper Cherokee before I was born. So they had it for a couple of years, did some flying. They based it out of this small field here in Apopka in Orlando. Once I was born, my mom looked at my father and said, we're buying a house, we have a kid, and we have an airplane. One of those has to go. So his choice was the Cherokee. So Cherokee got shipped off. It was sold. And fast forward to 2018, my parents all those years, focus on raising children, just kind of building their own personal wealth. Once my sister and I were out of the house, we're independent, my dad, kind of started thinking about this again, like, look, I'm a private pilot, I want to fly again. So he, for a couple of years, did his own kind of research to try to find the perfect plane.
Yeah.
In 2018, I got a call from him where he was like, I found it. I'm like, no, you didn't. You've been telling me this for like a year. So he sent a picture. It's a 1981 Piper Archer. And he's like, I bought it. This isn't we're not talking about this anymore. This is it. So I was like, oh, cool. Like, my dad has a plane. All right. Well, that's something. It was a very interesting, like, all right. So a couple of months after that, he got current. He was, ready to fly the plane, and took me up. And I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the small plane. These things are dangerous. How do they fly? Like, there's steam gauges that are literally from 1981. Is this okay? And so we get in the plane and I'm nervous. Like, my dad could tell I was nervous. And he's like, hey, it's fine. Everything's good. And he's like, if you want, we can come back. No big deal. So we take off and, we kind of level out. And my dad looks at me, and we're probably like 3,000 feet or so. He looks at me and said, hey, take the controls. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Take the controls. I'm going to kill us. If I take the controls, we're going down into this lake underneath us. So I did. And, I turned the plane, what I thought was like, ooh, I'm flying the plane. How cool. And we come back and, it was probably like an hour flight. My dad took back the controls. We did some landings. I was pretty comfortable after seeing how he flew it. And I just remember thinking during that flight, something changed. And we landed, and I thought about it for a couple of days. And I was like, I'm going to learn to fly that plane. That there's something sparked in that flight where it made me feel like I need to be able to do this. I want to challenge myself to fly that plane. So I saved up for a couple of years, and it started recreational. It was kind of one of those things where I just wanted to fly that plane. That plane was very important to me. Again, something changed in that flight. I flew with my dad multiple times after that. We'd go have breakfast. We'd go have lunch here and there. We'd go over the coast, and it was just all very, very exciting. And it really pushed me even further to want to learn how to fly that particular plane.
So I assume then that you went to go learn how to fly.
So I did. So it was very interesting. I went actually to it really has all come full circle. I went to their current plane, that Archer, is actually at the same airport. They kept the Cherokee way before I was born. And I've done my flight training at that airport as well. Okay. So again, I saved up for a couple of years. I had enough where I felt comfortable to get my private pilot certificate. I was working full time, and I went into the school, and I remember walking in and this flight instructor, introducing himself to me and saying like, hey, what are you here for? And I'm like, I just want to learn to fly. Like, how can we start this process? And I was working on also at that time, I was about to sit to take my exam to become a certified lactation counselor.
Okay.
So that's kind of another endeavor I wanted to take within my current career to help families who are breastfeeding, who need assistance. Lactation counselors can be kind of expensive for a lot of families to use privately. Okay. So I pursued that as a personal endeavor within our agency to offer that service to our families for free. So that was kind of something I was working on wrapping up. And I remember saying to the flight instructor at the time, I have to wrap some things up with nutrition, but I'm ready to dive in and learn how to fly this plane. We started out, we did some flights. I remember the first flight, and we still joke about it to this day. The ceilings were kind of low. And the first flight, I remember us taking off, and we went into a cloud. And he said, my controls, let's get back down. It was kind of one of those things where you look up and you're like, you're really hopeful, but those ceilings are actually a little bit lower than you expect.
Sure, yeah.
It was one of those days, and that was my first, experience. So pushed through, a couple of flights a week. I was working full time still. And I would say that was about 6 months later. I'd switched aircraft a couple of times. We went from a light sport to a Cessna to a Piper. And I found myself in Pipers. Like, I was very comfortable. It just all made sense, So I had my first solo. It was very exciting. My family was there. My dad almost made me cry when he saw me solo. It was a very, emotional experience. And less than a month later, I got in a car accident that, it was the night before Thanksgiving, and a car turned left in front of me. They just busted through a stop sign, and I couldn't, it was right in front of me. It was so sudden. Oh. And I crossed, a couple lanes of traffic. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, wow, that just happened. And I get out of the car, adrenaline running. Come to find out, I had a broken ankle. And I had my first solo cross country was actually scheduled for in the next couple of days. So I was devastated. And I remember sitting in the hospital, and the nurse practitioner that was in there, wrapping up my ankle and making sure, I was like comfortable. I remember her saying like, well, you don't really need your feet to fly. And I was just like, I just broke down and was like, but you do.
Yeah.
And so I remember that was kind of another pivoting point for me where I thought, this means so much to me. And it's something that I don't know how long it's taken away from me. And I remember thinking at the time, like, if this means this much to you, you need to do something about this. It was already my goal to get my private pilot certificate again to fly the Archer, but that downtime that I had really made me, I guess, confirm that this is something that I wanted to do for a living. This is something that I wanted to pursue, and I was very serious about it. And so that was a huge, it's definitely a setback, but I always kind of try to look at things as, there's a silver lining somewhere. That was my silver lining, where it was like, I was debating on, all right, you're going to go further in nutrition. So you're going to get a master's degree, a PhD, teach at a collegiate level, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Or we're going to change careers. And for me, that moment of, experiencing like, I can't fly a plane for I don't know how long. I'm stuck in my house. I can't go to the airport. I can't go outside. I can't go to work. For me, it confirmed that this is what you want. This is it was a very like definitive moment for me where I decided that you feel some type of way about this. You're very emotional about the fact that you can't go up and finish off your private pilot certificate. This means a lot more than you initially thought it meant.
Yeah.
So that was definitely, again, it was a big setback, but I always find a silver lining in situations. And my silver lining in that was that for me was my answer. That for me gave me that answer of this is what you want to do. You've loved nutrition for 12 years. You've been an integral part of, the community aspect, the clinic practice aspect. So it was just kind of that was my decision point right there.
We'll get back to this week's interview in just a moment, but first, a word from those who make the Fly the Transition podcast possible. Let's talk about some of the best active noise reduction headsets on the market. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just taking flight lessons, Lightspeed Aviation headsets are engineered with you in mind every step of the way. They've created the quietest and most durable A&R headsets on the market. Their high quality and innovative technology ensures you stay comfortable, connected, and safe in the cockpit. I've personally flown with Lightspeed for over a decade, and I wouldn't dream of flying with any other headset. Elevate your flying experience with Lightspeed. Check out our affiliate link in the show notes so that you can support the podcast with your next purchase. Aviation friends, are you looking for eyewear that's as adventurous as you are? Look no further than Flying Eyes Optics. Their ultralight, comfortable, and durable glasses and sunglasses are perfect for pilots. They are designed by pilots, for pilots, and for my money, they're the best aviation eyewear that I have ever had. If you or that special pilot in your life are interested in Flying Eyes, check out our affiliate link down in the show notes and use code FlyingMidwest10 and you can get 10% off your next purchase at Flying Eyes.
You're listening to Fly the Transition. If you've ever thought about changing careers and getting into the aviation industry, welcome to your new home. Now, back to your host, Jim Schilling.
So now that you've made that decision, what are some considerations that you have to start thinking about to make this a reality?
So, money. That was a big consideration. I have, almost paid off. I'm just shy of like $1,500 at paying off my student loans from college. That's almost done. I don't want to take out another loan. That loan's been sitting there for how many years? Don't want to do that again. So I had to sit down and really think about what I'm going to do with my budget and what I'm going to start cutting out and how I'm going to, go about funding this myself and making it happen with my salary. So I continued to work full time. I got back into flying once the doctors gave me the blessing, like, hey, you're good to go. I got back to it, finished off my private pilot certificate and started time building for instrument, the cross-country time building that's required.
Uh-huh.
And I just have pretty much had to budget myself. These are the amount of flights you can do per week based on your salary. This is what you can continue pulling from your savings. So it's been a pretty big struggle along the way because, as much as I've been in the field for, 12 years nutrition, I've stepped into managerial positions. It's still a nonprofit and it's still a government funded position.
Yeah.
So the income is not, exactly what, a lot of people would think. So it's been a struggle. It's been definitely a financial balance. Constantly pulling from my savings if I want to fly a little bit more. I'll, jump into the Archer and my dad will say like, okay, pay for fuel. You can be PIC, pay for fuel. Interestingly, I think I only have like 10 hours out of 370 in that plane. So it's not too much. I've flown it. A lot of it has been training. A lot of my flying has been training. So that I would say has been the hardest part. Just really, saying no to things, like I'm a big foodie.
Yeah.
God, food's expensive.
Yes, it is.
You experience like new restaurants or you want to go out and have like, new cocktails at this ritzy new place with friends. It's like, you need to reconsider that. So I've definitely taken, of course, social life when you become a student pilot gets put on the back burner. My friends understand, my family understands. So that's probably been I would say the biggest challenge, as well as balancing being a full-time manager. Monday through Friday, I've got this, 9 to 5 where I'm a nutrition manager. There's 1,000 kids in our program. I have 3 specialists I cover. And then I go on the weekends and I fly Saturday, Sunday. And then it's back to nutrition. And then it's back to flying. It's been this like cycle for the past couple of years of just keep doing it. Just keep grinding. It'll pay off. You won't have loans. This is a path, that's the direction I chose because I didn't want to deal with those loans again.
Sure.
That was a decision that I made for myself and I knew it would be a challenge. So a lot of it is just balance and I figured it out. It was hard in the beginning, but I figured out like, hey, all right, you go to work 9 to 5. Fortunately, my 9 to 5 is more like a 7:30 to 3:30. So I get out a little bit early. I still have time to like cook. I have time to go to the gym. I have time to study. I have time for myself to get those things done throughout the week. And then obviously Saturday, Sunday goes back to flying. And then the cycle kind of continues.
Sure. It sounds like you're really being intentional about the savings part of it, though. Like you're making cuts where you can and being really deliberate with how you're spending so that you can dedicate what you can to aviation. For
me, that's the most important part is the budgeting aspect. I wouldn't be able to do this without budgeting, shopping frugally. I go to like, multiple different grocery stores to piece together the best deals, to make sure that I'm still getting, decent meals. I enjoy cooking and I enjoy, obviously healthy eating. So I still prioritize those things, but you have to go about it more intentionally. And that's kind of something I've just really, throughout the years had to kind of teach myself.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question about, you mentioned that you are still managing full time and you're putting aviation into the weekend. Do you find that during the week that you have to fit in studying time as well? Or do you have the opportunity to fit in any flying during the week? Or is it pretty much, I work Monday through Friday and then the balance is Saturday, Sunday, I can devote to aviation?
Yeah. So it's kind of, I found a few days during the week where I can study once I get home. I don't have children that I'm raising or anything right now. So I'm in a position where I can, dedicate that time to myself, where I can study, I can focus on that. I've been given the opportunity to have a remote day. So on my remote day, I can kind of like dip out just a little bit early and schedule a flight. Okay. So that's been helpful to tack on that extra flight because as we know, there's maintenance, there's weather, there's any, circumstance where those 2 weekend flights might not happen. Mm-hmm. And then I'm not flying for 2 weeks. And that's tough when, you're always building with aviation and learning to fly. You're always building on a lesson. And
for sure.
Right. When you push back like 2 weeks, once you get to, like I'm 35 years old, I'm not the 20-year-old spring chicken that would absorb everything like I did when I was, becoming a nutritionist. So it's when I see those flights get canceled for weather, for maintenance, it's frustrating, of course. So that's why I tried to tack on that third day for my training. So I can at least I know I'm probably going to fly 1 to 2 days. If I fly 3 out of those days, it's like, this is a very lucky week. So yeah, it's definitely been, I've always been, again, like huge nerd. I always call myself like a huge nerd. Studying for me is not difficult, right? When you come to aviation, we're definitely all nerds.
Yeah, all of us. Yeah.
So I dedicate that time to studying. That's for me isn't, super difficult. Once I get the time, it's like, all right, Leila, get in the books. It's more of finding the time sometimes, and getting those flights in and building off of, those lessons where I'm not taking like a 2-week gap.
So as you're working your way through your ratings here, you're working your commercial rating now, right?
That's correct.
What is your goal for where you'd like to go in aviation?
So I have always, and kind of to backtrack to what I said before about my favorite part of my job is training. I am very excited to be a flight instructor. And it's because I enjoy talking about what I like. I like talking about food. That's why I enjoy, training in my position. I love talking about airplanes, and that's kind of, I found myself, really wanting to go in that direction where I can share experiences with new students, like these same experiences that flight instructors get to have with students that, my flight instructor had with me, my first solo, my first cross country, my first check ride. I will be probably more emotional than the student. It's something that it's very fulfilling that you've trained someone to get to that point.
Yeah,
and for me, that's very exciting. And again, I enjoy talking about things that I like. I like food and I like airplanes. Those are two of my favorite things. So I can't wait to share, that same passion with students. Unfortunately, flight instructing isn't something that people do make it, careers. They go to chief positions.
Yeah.
In the long term, I want to fly big planes. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that looking back to when I was 18 years old and I got on that first flight and I was terrified. I'm like, how does this thing work? How much weight are we lifting in the air? And now that, when you come to understand that, you're like, that's something I want to do. That's my end goal.
Awesome. In your training, have you found that any of your skills or traits from your current job are relatable to aviation or transfer well?
The biggest skill that I would say has transferred well has been the aspect, like almost the human resource aspect. So really, working with different populations like I've working with very wide gambit of families, children, conditions. I would say that's been the biggest transferable skill is the HR aspect of it. Like just people skill, working with people. That's something. Crew resource management is huge in aviation. And I feel like that's a skill that I've learned throughout the years with working with different teams that, kind of going back to what I said about how we all feel like we have the most important department. Well, we're all equally important for this one cause. So I think going back to that and really, having the experience that I have in the field that I'm in now has taught me to work very well with people. So I think that will be the most valuable transferable skill. Again, working with just such a wide population of people and really understanding the differences and kind of moving forward. And you're all going towards the same goal. We're all trying to work for this agency to make these kids healthy. We all need to get this plane to that airport safely. So I think it's kind of that's the biggest transferable skill that I've been able to take from my position.
So how close are you to that commercial rating?
I'm getting there. Yeah, I would say I have a date set. Awesome. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
So I have all the requirements done. I did all you either have the PIC or soloed PIC time, the requirements, and I did all the solo. And it was just kind of one of those experiences where it's like, wow, I feel like a real pilot. Like when I did the long commercial cross country.
Yeah.
Like I've been a pilot for, a year and a half at this point, but I'm like, whoa, you feel like a real pilot. I filed IFR, it was such for me, that was like another pivotal flight where I'm like, this is why I'm doing this. So I'm getting there. Yeah, requirements are set. It's just, really ironing out those maneuvers and getting it done.
I guess I didn't ask you earlier, I should have, but what kind of school are you going through? Are you part 141 or?
Yeah, so I train at a small mom and pop school, and it's family owned. I've been there for a couple of years, and they started with just like a couple of planes, and now it's word of mouth has gotten out about how the school portrays themselves, the family environment, and so that's kind of where I've stuck. So it's for me, it's worked out because going the Part 61 route, it's very much at your own speed. That's what I need. I work full time. I can't dedicate like 141 students can dedicate, every single day to this. This is again the avenue I chose to, obtain these credential or to obtain these certifications. It's worked out very well for me. And they fly in all Piper fleet.
You like Pipers, it sounds.
It's kind of something that I like Pipers. Yeah, I guess, I found my place in them. It was just in my blood. So
what advice do you have for others who are looking to possibly make a switch into aviation?
So my biggest advice for someone who's trying to make a switch into aviation is it's hard. It's frustrating. There will be lots of ups and downs, along the way, but it's worth it. If this is a passion that you have, and this is something you might be finding this out, later in life, you might be finding this into your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, whatever it is, it's not late. If this is something you want, go for it. Go to your local airport, your FBO, talk to people. That's one thing I found at the school that I train at. I'll just go and talk to everyone, flight instructors that aren't even, I'm not even flying with, other students. Hey, what are you working on? And these have become the people that they're your biggest cheerleaders. One thing in aviation is everybody wants everybody
for sure.
succeed. And that's something that I've personally found. Yeah. So you need to build that support group, and the only person that can do that is you. And it takes a lot of getting out of your comfort zone. Whether you're not the most social person or you don't want to go and, really put yourself out there, it's so worth it because those people are going to be the ones that keep pushing you through. They're your cheerleaders. So that's a big piece of advice I have for anyone who's trying to make this a career change. Just go talk to people. Apply for scholarships. I was fortunate recently to receive a scholarship from the Fly Girl Sporty Foundation that's helped me cover a pretty big expense of my commercial training.
That's so cool.
And it was just something that it was so exciting. I applied for the scholarship and was like, all right, we'll see what happens. Like I just told my story and how, I got to where I am now and like what I want to do. And I became a finalist, and then I got the call that I got the scholarship, and it was just like, okay, like you just out of nowhere just said, all right, cool. Like a friend of mine, another pilot, said, hey, you should apply to this. And I'm like, all right, cool, I will. I've applied for scholarships, haven't really gotten them, but it's worth a shot. So that was very exciting. And they're out there. The scholarships are available. Again, if it's something that you want to do and you have a passion for it, make it happen. Make it happen. Whether it's doing it the way I've done it, working full time, flying on the weekends, it takes more time, it takes a lot of dedication, it takes a lot of balance. Or if you want to just, cut the ties entirely and go 141, it'll be worth it. That's my biggest piece of advice. If this is something that you want to do, it is absolutely worth it. When you take off and you're in that plane and you look down and you see, the lakes below you or the traffic below you, it's one of those things that's like, I can do this. I can fly this plane. How many people can say they can fly an airplane? It's very self-fulfilling. Again, it's a confidence booster. It's going back to my degree in nutrition, I took it's a pre-med route. That was really hard to get that degree. And these certifications that I've, got along the way for nutrition, it's been a difficult process. Learning to fly at this, stage of my life, I would argue and say that this has been more difficult than that. You tack on the balances, the financial considerations, like, yeah, there's some added stress there, but if it's something that you want to do, it's not too late. It's worth it.
That is fantastic advice. And congratulations on the scholarship. That is really cool.
Yeah, thank you. It was a huge surprise. It was something I applied to a few, and this just kind of came out of nowhere that I got the call, and I like literally cried. I was so ecstatic because I was in a position where I was flying a good amount, and for commercials, a lot of, that you need to not just build. My time was already built, I should say, but like you still have to do those solo flights. You still have to do maneuver flights. Like there's a lot of training that goes along with it. And I was at a point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm flying 3 days a week. This is hurting financially. Like, how am I making this happen? My savings is getting depleted. So it came at the right time. The scholarships are out there. It's worth, putting your story out, putting your resume out to those, and you never know.
Yeah, that's really cool. So the next thing I have to ask you, as you work through these ratings, you're going to get your commercial hopefully soon, and you're going to be working on CFI. You're going to keep us updated, right, on how you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. I am very excited to keep you guys updated on, the continuation of my journey through flight instructing, through, the growing pains of having, students and them trying to kill you in the plane, all of that. Like I'm very excited to continue sharing my story.
Awesome. When you get those ratings, let us know, because I'm going to make a big deal out of it. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. I've really enjoyed talking with you tonight, and I wish you all the best in your journey through aviation.
Thank you so much, Jem. This has been such a pleasure. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share my story. Hopefully it inspires, some others who are in their career and they're happy with their career, but they want to maybe progress into something else, or maybe they're at a point where they're also trying to pivot.
Yeah.
This could be something to consider.
Well, thank you once again to Leila for joining me on the Fly the Transition podcast. This episode was a lot of fun because not only did we get to see the passion that she had for working in nutrition, but you can also feel that passion as she is working her way into her career in aviation. So really excited to see where she takes things in the future. I did reach out to her for an update for the episode, and congratulations to Leila, as she is now officially a commercial pilot. So that is so awesome to hear. She had her check ride back on January 25th, and she is starting off in her CFI training. One note that she also added is that she did her commercial training and the check ride from the right seat, in hopes of that flight training aspect not taking as long for her CFI, since that will obviously be done on the right side, as opposed to where we all start as students over in that left seat. So once again, congratulations to you, Leila. I can't wait to hear where your career takes you in the future. So what's coming up in our next episode? Well, I'm glad you asked. Next week, we're going to take a look into the agricultural side of aviation and talk to Hervé. He is a crop duster pilot in the Midwest, and he comes from a career path of being a rifleman in the United States Marine Corps. So thank you for your service in that regard, and I look forward to sharing that story next week. So if you like what we're doing here, or you want to be a guest in a future episode, absolutely feel free to reach out to me. It's flythetransition@gmail.com, or you can reach me on any of my social medias, which are down in our show notes. And don't forget to like and subscribe, rate and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. It certainly helps out in spreading the word to others. So that will do it for this week's episode. Thank you once again for joining me on Fly the Transition, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to Fly the Transition. Life is too short for you not to do what you love. And our passion is to give you all the tools you need to make the transition from doing what you do to being in the aviation industry. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, you can reach out by email at flythetransition@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook at Fly the Transition. And the website for Flying Midwest Media is flyingmidwest.com. Keep soaring. See you next time on Fly the Transition.